any good business has to have natural tailwinds and natural success, because you're going to make mistakes and you have to be able to have sort of a padding for that. If you have to squeeze water out of rocks to get every sale you're going to get for your company, it's never going to work. So there's got to be a level of ease in some part of your business to get people in, to get customers. If there isn't, you probably don't have a great business.
This is Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, your go-to guide to solving your biggest retail social media marketing challenges authentically. I'm your host, Mike Alden, and each episode is an honest and frank look at what marketers go through, from awful algorithms to terrific trends and ideas that you can apply to your own business. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, where we're digging into the challenges, successes, and stories of social media and community professionals in the industry, just like you. Subscribe to gain valuable insights that you'll be able to apply to your own work and social presence from each and every episode. Now, imagine having a front row seat to the marketing strategies of some of the biggest retail brands in the world. You've seen their campaigns, bought their products, and maybe even wondered what goes on behind the scenes. What makes certain strategies soar while others fail to take flight? Today, we're diving deep into the world of retail marketing with insights from someone who's been at the helm of campaigns for brands like Crocs, KSwiss, and the Getty Museum Store. What does it take to make a retail brand truly stand out? What marketing tactics lead to epic victories, and which ones miss the mark? These are the questions we're diving into with our guest, Erik Huberman. Erik is the CEO and founder of Hawke Media, a marketing powerhouse known for its innovative and data-driven approach. Erik has seen firsthand what works and what doesn't when it comes to retail marketing. From viral campaigns to behind-the-scenes challenges, he's here to share insights and lessons learned from helping some of the most recognized retail brands achieve their marketing goals. Hey, Erik, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So excited to dig into this with you. Could you start by just sharing your journey in founding Hawke Media and how you started working with some of those major retail brands like Crocs and KSwiss?
Sure. It started, where do I start? I mean, it started as 6 years old. No, I graduated in 2008, went into real estate. That was 2008. So I made $350 that year, which for those that don't know is not enough to live in LA, even if it was, 16 years ago. And so I started scrambling, figured out I needed to do something else, and started an online music company in 2009 that I raised $1 million for, got it to profitability after 2 years, realized it was never going to be that big, hired a CEO to take my place, built an e-commerce t-shirt company called Swag of the Month. I sold a year and a half later, then joined Science, the incubator that had just launched Dollar Shave Club, helped consult there for a bunch of their marketing in their portfolio, and then helped them launch an activewear brand called Ellie that we sold a year later to Bally Total Fitness, and then started advising and consulting for a bunch of brands around town. I was 26, had built a reputation for myself as building and selling to e-commerce brands. And so a lot of other people wanted to know what I had learned, and I didn't want to work for them full time. So consulted, realized how broken the marketing ecosystem was, and how, even to this day, 99% of marketers and agencies are just horrible at what they do. And the few that are good are really hard to find and really hard to work with. And so just got sick of it, built my own little SWAT team, called it Hawke Media. It was 7 people in January of 2014. And now a decade later, we're 250 people. We've worked with almost 5,000 brands. We've built a venture fund. We're invested in over 100 marketing tech and e-commerce tech companies. We've got our own AI tool called Hawke AI that's digesting 8,000 companies' marketing, media, and revenue data in real time and training AI against it. So yeah, just continued to try to be a marketing powerhouse.
Yeah. So not much going on really at all.
Just hanging out.
So you've worked with all these brands. What are some of the biggest marketing challenges that you've faced working with them specifically? And how did you overcome those?
With them, meaning the bigger brands, or who's them?
Yes.
Yeah. So on the bigger side,
brands.
Yeah, it's places not talking to each other. The advantage that small and medium brands have is you can turn on a dime and it's one person usually making all the decisions, or a couple people, where you're talking about entire departments in different countries with some of the bigger guys. So when you want to do an email marketing campaign to complement a Facebook campaign, you're literally talking about 2 different teams in 2 different countries with 2 different agencies. And so It's just the nimbleness of it. It's amazing to me, but I consistently, even today, still run into companies that are consumer-driven companies that don't have an email or SMS strategy. Like, email's not new. We're long past the days of emailing new. And I'm talking about like brands everybody listening would know that don't have an email marketing system whatsoever. And it is crazy to me. And it's simply because they just can't get through well, who owns it? Is it e-commerce, or is it marketing, or is it data? And then or is it IT? And then who gets to make the decision on which one we use? And by the time you get through that 2-year cycle, no decision's been made and the next guard comes in. So it's like, there's a lot of companies out there that just get stuck in the bureaucracy of it. And that's probably the biggest challenge I see, is they just can't move. Even when it's hyper lucrative and probably a low lift, no one can make the decision.
Yeah, so that's a opportunity for smaller and medium brands who
Yeah.
can be more nimble. That's something we've talked about a lot in other aspects, but definitely in this area, like that's a great example. You want to do an email campaign to complement a social media campaign. Yeah, who do you talk to? Who owns what? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. In a huge bureaucracy,
Yeah.
that's a
We
problem.
deal with it. We'll go into these brands and we'll even come through the CEO or CMO of some, we're talking Fortune 500 sometimes. And we'll end up like in this quagmire of like, wait, we don't even know who to ask to get the stuff done we want to, like, and then it just goes nowhere. We spend a year talking to different teams and then it just falls off.
Yeah, yeah. So thinking about some of these larger brands that you've worked with and the marketing campaigns that you've run, can you share a
Mhm.
success story? One of those brands that you've worked with where the strategy exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I mean, Crocs is a great one. That's a public case study we have, that because we always, we have to be cautious what we're allowed to share and
Yeah,
people are okay with us sharing. But I mean, that speaks for itself. I'm not going to say we deserve all the credit for that, but Crocs has had a great resurgence, and we were able to bring just a Gen Z influencer army for them to really get them kind of back in the limelight as being, relevant. They were just starting to get there already, so they had done a lot of the work themselves. But we are able to really like put a megaphone on it and get an army of Gen Z TikTok influencers to do a campaign for them that basically made them the go-to shoe of 2022.
mm,
And so that's a great one. What I like, and some that I can't share, but like we did a great toy launch into Target, where what we realized was, and it was a holiday launch, we wanted to be the toy of the year, and we ended up really succeeding because, again, goes back to, I think, the nimbleness of these big companies. They don't realize that digital marketing, you're reaching real people. And if you use digital to push into retail, it's not a common use of it, but you can be so targeted, it works really well. And you're also then not competing very heavily because no one else is doing it. So it's not like people are flooded with stuff to go to the store and buy on social because it's harder to track that direct attribution. So instead of people understanding like it still works and there's ways to, at least get a sort of basic understanding of the performance of it, because they can't track it perfectly like you can with e-commerce, a lot of people don't do it, which means the competition's even lower too. And you can actually really crush it driving to retail using digital. And so when we've had customers and clients willing to do that, 9 times out of 10, it's been just gangbusters. The problem is we can't just say like, oh, that was obviously this, but it is, we can say it was obviously, we can't say it was definitively, where it's like, the toy company I'm talking to, we outpaced their projected velocity of sales by 8x because we
mm,
ran the campaigns around certain stores. So we were able to say like those stores didn't have that performance. These ones did. What was the difference? This digital marketing campaign. And so
yeah,
that strategy, again, it's hard to track. And it used to be you couldn't track anything, and then you could track a lot, and now you can track somewhere in between. And I think people have frankly become a little too dependent on the data and tracking side of things, that they're actually cutting off their nose to spite their face and not just understanding that if you have a great product, these marketing channels should work and you should be able to make money off them if you do it the right way.
that's a fantastic takeaway for retail brands. And just a quick technical note for anyone's listening, if you care. One of the things that we do in the prep is we look at folks' websites, and in this case, an agency. I saw your case studies. I knew who I could talk about and who I could talk to in terms of brands. But my next question, I wouldn't expect you to name names for a couple of reasons, but I was interested in whether or not you've got a campaign that didn't perform well and what kind of lessons maybe you learned from that experience.
Yeah, I actually was just with the founder of a company that just, I actually, this is the part that's really hard, is like, we stepped into a brand that had already been in decline for a couple of years, but before that was a great brand. And we wanted to turn it around. We took over all of digital. And from every metric we had, it was doing great. But the overall revenue just kept declining, kept declining. And I was like, what are you changing? And what I found out was they were pulling out of stores. They stopped doing other campaigns that they were doing. They stopped doing all the complimentary stuff, hoping that we would pick up the slack. And the problem is everything drives. And so when thankfully we run best practices on these digital channels, and the things we do day in, day out. And again, it's best practices. So the variable isn't us really. And I did this purposely. Like I focus mostly on scalable, repeatable marketing because that's what a business needs to scale and be sustainable. And so the stuff we do doesn't have a lot of opportunity to be complete failure unless there's something else wrong. So with a new company, it could be that just people just don't want the product. There's not a product market fit. That's possible. But when it's a company that's already got product market fit, sometimes they pull off the gas in other places that we have no part of. And so as we're maybe ramping up and starting to do well, they're pulling all this down. And so in this case, all the other things that they had done, they thought they could stop doing. And so we were never able to get above water to catch up. And then frankly, it got so bad. I still to this day don't understand how they had the negative performance they did. Like it was one of those, like again, I saw the CEO last week. We don't work together anymore. It's obviously not, there's no bad blood there. We hung out and had coffee and caught up. It was more because we understood like neither of us could figure out what the problem was. And I'd say that one stands out to me just because sometimes there's an X factor that you just can't nail. And I think any good business has to have natural tailwinds and natural success because you're going to make mistakes and you have to be able to have sort of a padding for that. If you have to squeeze water out of rocks to get every sale you're going to get for your company, it's never going to work. So there's got to be a level of ease in some part of your business to get people in, to get customers. If there isn't, you probably don't have a great business.
That is a fantastic example of the challenge of great marketing, because nothing that we do happens inside of a box. You're doing
Right.
a digital paid campaign. Well, your organic is going to impact that, and vice
Yep.
versa. And to your point, stuff that you're doing, on the ground inside of stores, that's also going to have an impact on the business. And it takes some work and some folks with access internally to know here's all the things that we're doing and the
Yep.
impact they're having. Now, one thing you mentioned was having that repeatable, scalable approach with
Yep.
clients. It's something we've talked about many times on our other shows, where we're talking with new agencies and they're kind of building everything from scratch for every single new client. We don't want to do that at all. But I'm wondering, how much do you actually tailor some of your marketing strategies for different retail brands? What are you kind of looking at that might be customized just to ensure that they resonate?
Yeah, it really depends on the brand. Like whether we're going to leverage more TikTok, more Instagram, more Facebook, more Google. To be clear, and this is an important distinction, it's not about demographics. The demographic thing is long gone. You can reach any
Yeah.
demographic on any of these platforms. So when people are like, "Oh, well, younger people on TikTok," I'm like, no, everybody's on TikTok.
Nope.
Like from a demographic perspective, everybody's on all of these. There's how many? I mean, tens of millions in the U.S. on each one of these. So stop until you're a massive brand. That's not something to even think about. But the context in which they're receiving that ad and how people leverage those platforms is what would dictate it. And TikTok, you have what's interesting about TikTok is it's more the graph is more based on your interests and the algorithm is based on what you're interested in, not what you follow or who you connected with or what you like. And so you can reach and you can kind of create new demand and reach people that would never have engaged prior in a way that they're used to seeing things that are random. That being said, the algorithm on TikTok is not as good as it is on Meta yet because it hasn't had the time to mature. And so Meta, you're still getting a lot better targeting. And so it's still outperforming, but I think over time that will change. That being said, certain brands just seem to perform better on one or the other. So we usually test them against each other. Google is more about answering existing demand. People are looking for something. So if you have a product that specifically serves a need, so you create the first, I don't know, vegan hot chocolate, like that. If someone's searching for vegan hot chocolate, you should be on Google. So we're going to use Google for again, you're servicing a niche. And as you build brand, as you do these other ads, as you get the brand out there, people might not remember your brand name, but they're going to remember the problem it serves. And you want to make sure you show up then too. So it's all these pieces that you pull in to figure out like where you're going to go. And those are the three main channels, obviously, but like Pinterest is great too. If you're a fashion brand or a home decor brand, is really good on Pinterest. Anything to do around like weddings, anything to do around planning that people create Pinterest boards for is a good thing to advertise on Pinterest. So also meals. So, home
Yeah.
cooking stuff.
Yeah, I love those distinctions between the channels. Understand the nuance of why people are on those channels in the first place. What is their intent? What are they thinking about? Where's their frame of mind when they're using them? That makes a lot of sense. Folks, we're talking with Erik Huberman about how some of the biggest brands in retail are rocking their marketing. And I've got a bunch more questions from you you're not going to want to miss. But before I get to those, let me share with you the story of how another retail brand, Love Pop, is crushing social media.
Love Pop Cards is a 3D greeting card company, and we are about 5 years old, and we are based in the idea of creating magical moments. And so our company's mission is to create 1 billion magical moments. So I am the director of customer happiness, which means I'm responsible for sort of being the voice of Love Pop to our customers, and then also being the voice of our customers within Love Pop. So it goes in both directions. So before we transitioned to Agora Pulse, one of the things that was really difficult for us was that we had a high volume of ads where customers were commenting and wanted to interact with us or wanted to tell us what they thought of the products they're advertising. And we had a limited number of licenses for our social media monitoring tool. And so we were unable to keep up with the inbox, and the inbox was actually unable to keep up with the volume of ads we were running. And so we both weren't getting all the comments that were being added to all these ads, and we couldn't reply to what we were getting anyway. So when we moved over to Agora Pulse and we got to the point where we had an inbox that captured direct messages, it captured the listening, and we were able to pull in the ad comments in the same place, we could use it just like we would use any other inbox like in our ticketing system. It's really changed our ability to follow up with customers and make sure we're being responsive and interacting with them when they want. Also, a little hidden feature that I love is that you can see the history of any customer's comments with us. So sometimes we'll get a comment and we're not exactly sure either if they were talking to us earlier or if this is somebody who has been giving us a hard time for a while. And you can just click on them and see their profile and get an idea for how they've interacted with us over time.
So, Erik, I'm wondering, what role does data play when you're shaping campaigns for your clients? Can you maybe even give us an example of what we would call a data-driven insight that led to some campaign success?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good insight because I think these days there's more problem with treating data as gospel than not being data driven. I think everybody's learned to be somewhat data driven. And yeah, so to answer your question directly, that's where our AI system comes in. Like the data, then this is a good example. If you're looking at your performance on Google Ads from Q4 to Q1, this happened this year, and a brand went, our CAC on Google has gone up 18% from Q4 to Q1. Well, what's wrong with Google? What are we doing wrong? Did we change our ads? Why is this broken? And we went and looked, and we're like, oh, look, the market, meaning across all the data we have, has gone up 23%. So you're actually doing better in terms of your increase than the entire market. And from like an actual hard number standpoint, you're way outperforming the market. So if that 18% increase doesn't work for you, it's not a function of how we're managing Google. We're beating how other people are doing Google. It's actually just a function of Google itself. And if you can't afford to do this, we should change your budgets and move it somewhere else or take your money off of there, because this is what it is. We're not squeezing more water out of this rock. So the problem is most people don't use that kind of data, don't use that access. So they'll see 18% decline, and from the CEO down, they'll be like, what'd you do wrong? Why'd you change your ads? We got to fix it. And they'll spend the next month trying to fix something that isn't broken. It's just changed. And it's kind of like in the S&P 500 to a wealth manager, where if your stock portfolio is up 3% this year, or actually it's go even more extreme. Your stock portfolio is up 15% this year. You're going, that's pretty good. 15% in a year is great. Not if the S&P 500 is up 35%. That's a huge miss. And without knowing what's going on in the sort of global benchmarks and the data side of it, reading data on your own means nothing. And so that's one issue I have with the data, the way people look at data. The other one is what happened with Facebook in 2021, 2022. So iOS 14, this all infamous thing. Basically, what people talk about is my performance declined when iOS 14 happened, and our performance on Facebook went to the toilet. And it's so funny because it didn't change performance whatsoever. And I shouldn't say whatsoever. It didn't change 95% plus of performance. And what I mean by that is what iOS 14 did was it made it so you went from being able to track Facebook ads and Instagram ads on a 28-day window. From when they clicked the ad, you could see for 28 days how it performed. And it basically made it so you can only track for 7 days, and it wasn't as accurate. So your ability to actually see the performance. So what's funny is nothing changed on the consumer side. People are still clicking ads and buying through Facebook and Instagram like they always did. But because these people couldn't track that window, instead of rationalizing that and being like, okay, I get it. So I can only track 7 days now. So I have to figure out other ways to account for how much revenue this is driving over 28 days. They literally compared it as if it were apples to apples, 7 days to 28 days sales cycle, and just went, oh, our performance is down, Facebook's broken, we're out. And then you see the massive decline in e-commerce revenue over the course of 2022, because frankly, a bunch of idiots didn't figure this out that were telling everyone else they knew what they were doing in marketing, hence my problem with most marketers. And we end up in this place where the data was saying they were underperforming, but they didn't know how to look at the data. And the truth was they weren't underperforming. They were doing just fine. And we even had this with a few clients that were like, no, but Facebook is reporting this. We're like, we get it. This is why it's reporting that. It's like, oh, you think you're smarter than Facebook? It's like, oh, Jesus. All right. And so that was one of the reasons we built the tool we did in Hawke AI. But it also just like, it is crazy to me that people don't have that one extra step of like, this is what the data says. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Like, what are you looking at? And not understanding that Facebook data, they're like, well, why would Facebook underperform or underreport? Because they can't report fully because Apple deletes their cookies now after 7 days. It's a very simple explanation, but that is what transformed e-commerce and digital marketing in 2022, when after the holidays, everyone went, oh God, interest rates are rising. I'm not seeing the performance we thought we would on Facebook because this Facebook dashboard says so. And so, by the way, I am shocked that Facebook hasn't done a better job of communicating this, but that is a huge shift and a good way to understand why you have to be careful about how you look at the data.
And it's a great example of how easy it is for so-called experts to share opinions that are misinformed and yet get taken as gospel by
Yep.
businesses and other marketers who just don't know any better. We had to combat the same thing at Agorapulse because almost a decade ago, if you had an app like ours and you were connecting with Facebook, it was a dedicated app, and those posts were actually shown as coming from Hootsuite or Agorapulse or whatever. Somebody used a scheduling tool, and you could block those apps, which people could do. And so 8-10 years ago, if you posted with a third-party tool to Facebook, your reach could actually drop. But then Facebook changed that. They stopped doing that. But a lot of folks continue to say, oh, don't post with a third-party tool. It's going to impact your reach. We had to spend thousands of dollars on a social media lab to test it, to prove to folks, no, that's not the
Yep.
case. Things have changed. So
Yep.
we understand that. Yeah, that's an uphill battle for many of us. But I'm wondering if you could also share
Yep.
some insights on when it comes to branding and storytelling, because
Yep.
I feel like it's a little bit different for retail, and I think it's even more different for larger brands who have that existing brand. How have you approached storytelling, for instance, with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in everything you do. Like the end of the day, we generally, when we're working with a bigger brand, they hopefully have their story, their general story. And so it's just making sure to feed into that brand identity and that brand alignment and giving that. But I would say we don't either that or we're getting in early and we're actually helping develop their story. And to me, and this is something that I think has been talked about a lot in marketing, but has also because it became such a cliche, I think it got pushed against, which I think is just because people like to be contrarians, and it's actually just the legitimate thing. Is I believe that all purchases, all spending happens because someone has an aspiration, and not in a grandiose way, but like at the end of the day, I'm not buying new socks unless I'm unsatisfied with my existing socks, whether they're not comfortable enough, they have holes in them, whatever. I'm buying a microphone because my old microphone doesn't work or it's too complicated, whatever. Like the only reason you do anything is because you're not satisfied with where you are. The only reason, like I get up and go downstairs because I'm thirsty. If I'm not thirsty, I wouldn't have gone downstairs for just the hell of it. So unless I'm bored, like there's reasons people do everything. And I consider that an aspiration. I'm aspiring to change my current state into something else. And so when I look at any brand story, it's about figuring out what is that aspiration that I'm creating for my customers that is fulfilled when they purchase my products. And that can be emotional, not just rational. So rational is, again, my socks have holes in them. I need to buy new socks. Emotional is, if I buy these socks, I'm helping homeless people get socks too. And I need socks anyways. So I'm going to buy these socks because they're helping people and I'm able to help people while I also am taking care of myself. Bombas is what I'm talking about, which I am wearing right now. So it's all these things. That's where the story comes in. And I think the problem is like, this is where when I talk about like Hawke is about performance marketing, this is actually what I mean. I believe in a lot of the brand marketing and the storytelling and everything that happens in marketing, but I believe it needs to be thought through as to why. Because a lot of people will go out and tell a story like, oh, we're going to donate. What's another good example? What's one that failed? I'm going to make something up. We're going to have a t-shirt company that donates to a bird sanctuary. And it's like, because we like birds. And it's like, okay, so if I buy your t-shirt, I help birds. Great. So people that are really passionate about helping birds will buy your t-shirts, maybe if they need a t-shirt. But like, why? That doesn't even like sync up. Why do I care?
Yeah.
Why? Like, and at the end of the day, this is actually an important in terms of the give back side. Blake from Tom's Shoes talks about this too. the end of the day, they need to want the product too. So people talk about storytelling being such a compelling piece, but like you have to have a good product. Like, and then story helps and it helps you compete. But like at the end of the day, your product is what matters. And then all these other things are what build off of that. And so telling a good story helps people with word of mouth. It helps them get over that, buyer's remorse. It helps them get over the hump and actually purchasing. And it whole has to feed into, at the end of the day, why they want to buy it. And so Tom Shoes is another good example. People bought those from his opinion, from Blake, the founder's opinion. They bought them because they looked really good with skinny jeans, which were popular at the time. And that added story of we're going to give a 1-for-1 in a pair of shoes to someone in need is what gave people more of a compelling reason to talk about them, made them in vogue, made them an easier purchase. It helped a lot. It got them a lot of press. But at the end of the day, they did so well because of the product. And that is a really important part in this storytelling is how does that story support why people want the product? Because if it's a far departure, it won't work. It's the same thing with building a great health brand and talking about health and wellness will work. But if you build a great running shoe brand and then you try to talk about food all the time, which is a random one, like you talk about being the shoes for people that like to eat. It's like, huh? Like, why do I care what shoes? Like, and that is what I see happen. Like, maybe it's a great story on its own, but it has nothing to do with the product you're creating, the aspiration that someone has to purchase those shoes. Could you go fashionable? Could you go good looking, desirable? Sure. Can you go, again, athletic, healthy? Sure. But it's got to fit. And that piece of the story. And then, yeah, we're a society and I'd say probably down to our genetics of storytellers. And so we want to hear the story behind it. We want to talk, we want to communicate, we want to have a narrative. And so that's where a lot of these, things layered on top come in. But I think it all has to lead back to that product.
That's a really powerful point because to your point, yeah, a lot of folks they're trying to tell stories. They don't understand the purpose of story. It doesn't have to be a Sarah McLachlan sad song moment to have that connection there, but it does need to be a connection. Like your made up example was perfect. What do t-shirts have to do with a bird sanctuary? Why do I care? Whereas, if we're talking about, Bombas and, homeless people and socks, I can instantly understand that connection that homeless folks are going to struggle to have the basic necessities like clothing and so on. And that makes a lot of sense. And I understand the plight of a homeless person. Just telling me bird sanctuary.
But back to that point,
why do they need it? What's the problem?
And back to the point, why do I buy Bombas socks? Like then this is really important with the give back side. I'll go donate to the homeless when I want to. I don't need to buy socks to donate to the homeless. I'll just go donate. Like, and most people feel this way. I buy Bombas because I like their socks. They make great socks. And I got Dave's a founder. He's awesome. I'm gonna have to send this clip to him. I'm shamelessly promoting him. But so that's not why I purchase them. Now it's a good afterthought, feel good, gives a little bit of positive, association with the brand. But at the end of the day, I think people, thankfully this has subsided a little bit. For a while, people thought this is what made their brand. People talk so much about the give back component, about the cause component being, the ESG side of things. And it's funny because it gets hyped up in the media. It gets hyped up within bigger corporations. It gets hyped up within founders. And at the end of the day, consumers don't care that much. They care a little bit. They want to know that you're doing something. And by the way, that's table stakes. You do have to do something, but it should align. Like what we do at Hawke Media, we teach inner city high school kids digital marketing skills so they can go out and get a great job out of high school. That is, we do digital marketing education. That is one of our give backs. And like that aligns. It's easy for us to perform. It's easy to do. We don't really market the fact that we do that because we're doing it because we should, because creating a better society around your company will benefit you. And so that's where that should come in. It became performative in a way, which I think people don't care anymore. It's just expected. Now, if you're not doing it, that's an issue.
Yeah, completely agree. Erik, I've got just one more question for you. Our time's almost up, but I'm wondering, and this is a question I love asking agencies, how are you currently measuring the business impact, particularly when it comes to social media and the marketing channels for these kinds of retail clients?
Revenue. That's what I care about. Like, are we driving profitable revenue growth? Like, we need to be growing the company. We need to be driving it efficiently. And that is what we've always cared about. That doesn't mean we're talking about day by day. I think that's where the mistakes come in. And back to the data point, the average sales cycle online for a consumer is somewhere between 3 weeks and 3 months for a product. So if we're measuring things, even on a monthly basis, you're missing out a lot of the half-life of how it's performing. But over time, measuring that performance and that growth and how you're doing month over month, year over year, those kind of things is definitely what we're measuring in terms of success. That's what we're focused on.
Love it. Love it. So many times folks answer me, oh, well, we're measuring engagement or we're measuring
Yeah,
likes. I'm
right.
like, oh gosh,
Hate
come on,
those.
please.
Exactly.
I'm gonna-
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing
If
that.
there's not a
Thank you
leading
for
if that's
this.
not a leading indicator for revenue, doesn't matter. No vanity metric.
Right?
Yep.
So this has been fantastic. I appreciate your time. For folks who want to learn more about you and connect with you, where can they go?
I'm easy to find social media @Erik Huberman or hawkmedia.com.
Terrific. We will have all the links in the show notes. Thank you, Erik, and thank you all of you for listening today. This has been terrific. Please find us on Apple and leave us a review. I'd love to know what you think. Until next time, thank you for listening to another episode of Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.